minus 84, and counting. With sour amusement, Richards thought that the game's bellboy had taken him literally about the novels. He must have picked them out with a ruler as his only guide. Anything over an inch and a half is okay. He had brought Richards three books that he had never heard of, two golden oldies titled God is an Englishman and Not as a Stranger, and a huge tome written 3 years ago called The Pleasure of Serving. Richards peeked into the first one and wrinkled his nose. Poor boy makes good in general atomics. Rises from engine wiper to gear tradesman. Takes night courses. On what? Richard wondered. Monopoly money? Falls in love with beautiful girl. Apparently syphilis hasn't rotted her nose off yet. And a block orgy. Promoted to junior technico. Followed dazzling aptitude scores. 3-year marriage contract follows, and Richard threw the book across the room. God is an Englishman was a little better. He poured himself a bourbon on the rocks and settled into the story. By the time the discreet knock came, he was 300 pages in and pretty well in the bag to boot. What on earth does that mean? Pretty well in the bag to boot? Someone American who's much older than a millennial clearly needs to enlighten us in what that is. One of the bourbon bottles was empty. He went to the door, holding the other in his hand. The cop was there. Your receipts, Mr. Richards, he said, and pulled the door closed. Sheila had not written anything, but had sent one of Kathy's baby pictures. He looked at it and felt easy tears of drunkenness prick his eyes, but he put it in his pocket and looked at the other receipt. Charlie Grady had written briefly on the back of a traffic jam ticket. Thanks, maggot. Get stuffed. Charlie Grady. Richard snickered and let the paper flitter to the carpet. Thanks, Charlie, he said to the empty room. I needed that. He looked at the picture of Kathy again, a tiny, red-faced infant of 4 days, the same time of the photo, screaming her head off, swimming in a white cradle dress that Sheila had made herself. He felt tears lurking and made himself think of good old Charlie's thank you note. He wondered if he could kill the entire second bottle before he passed out, and decided to find out. He almost made it. Minus 83, and counting. Richard spent Saturday living through a huge hangover. He was almost over it by Saturday evening and ordered 2 more bottles of bourbon with supper. He got both of them and woke up in the pale light of Sunday morning, seeing large caterpillars with flat, murderous eyes crawling slowly down the far bedroom wall. He decided then that it would be against his best interests to wreck his reactions completely before Tuesday and laid off the booze. This hangover was slower dissipating. He threw up a good deal, and when there was nothing left to throw up, he had dry heaves. These tapered off around 6 o'clock Sunday evening, and he ordered soup for dinner. No bourbon. He asked for 2 dozen neo-rock uh, discers to play on the sweet sound system, and tired of them quickly. He went to bed early and slept poorly. He spent most of Monday morning on the tiny glassed-in terrace that opened off the bedroom. He was very high above the waterfront now, and the day was a series of sun and showers, and it was fairly pleasant. He read 2 novels and went to bed early again and slept a little better. There was an unpleasant dream. Sheila was dead, and he was at her funeral. Somebody had propped her up in her coffin and stuffed a grotesque corsage of new dollars in her mouth. He tried to run to her and remove the obscenity. Hands grabbed at him from behind. He was being held by a dozen cops. One of them was Charlie Grady. He was grinning and saying, "This is what happens to losers, maggot." And they were pulling their pistols to his head when he woke up. Tuesday, he said to no one at all, and rolled out of bed. The fashionable GA sunburst clock on the far wall said it was 9 minutes to 7. The live TriCast of The Running Man would be going out all over North America in less than 11 hours. He felt a hot drop of fear in his stomach. In 23 hours, it would be fair game. He had not, he had not long. Uh, sorry, do you know what? The words are quite a bit smaller than the other books I'm used to reading, so maybe I need glasses. Give me the magnification. Uh, where did I get to? He had a long, hot shower, dressed in his coverall, ordered ham and eggs for breakfast, and also got the bellboy on duty to send him up a carton of blams. He spent the rest of the morning and early afternoon reading quietly. It was 2 o'clock on the nose when a single formal rap came at the door. 3 police and Arthur M. Burns, looking potty and more than a bit ridiculous in a game singlet, walked in. All the cops were carrying move-alongs. "It's time for your briefing, Mr. Richards," Burns said. "Would you—" "Sure," Richards said. He marked his place in the book that he had been reading and put it down on the coffee table. He was suddenly terrified, close to panic, and he was very glad there was no perceptible shake in his fingers. -82, and counting. The 10th floor of the games building was a great deal different from the ones below, and Richards knew that he had meant to go no higher. The fiction of upward mobility, which had started in the grimy street-level lobby, ended here on the 10th floor. This was the broadcast facility. The hallways were wide, white, and stark. Bright yellow go-karts, powered by GA solar cell motors, patterned here and there, carrying loads of freebie technicos to studio and control rooms. The cart was waiting for them when the elevator stopped, and the 5 of them, Richard, Burns, and the cops, climbed aboard. Necks craned, and Richards pointed out several times as they made the trip. One woman in a yellow games shorts and halter outfit winked and blew Richards a kiss. He gave her the finger. They seemed to travel miles through dozens of interconnecting corridors. Richards caught several glimpses into a dozen studios, one of them containing the infamous treadmill scene on Treadmill to Bucks. A tour group from uptown was trying it out and giggling. But at last they came to a stop before a door which read, "The Running Man, absolutely no admittance." Burns waved to the guard in the bulletproof booth beside the door and then looked at Richards. "Pull out your ID." "In the slot between the guard booth and the door," Burns said. Richards did it. His card disappeared into the slot, and a small light went on in the guard booth. The guard pushed the button, and the door slid open. Richards got back into the cart, and they trundled into the room beyond. "Where's my card?" Richards asked. "You don't need it any more." They were in a control room. The console section was empty, except for a bald technico who was standing in front of the black monitor screen, reading numbers into a microphone. Across to the left, Dan Killian and 2 men Richards hadn't met were sitting around a table with frosty glass. One of them was vaguely familiar, too pretty to be a technico. "Hello, Mr. Richards." "Hello, Arthur. Would you care for a soft drink, Mr. Richards?" Richards found he was thirsty. It was quite warm on 10 in spite of the heavy air conditioning units he'd seen. "I'll have a Rudy Toot," he said. Gillian rose and went to the cold cabinet and snapped the lid of the plastic squeeze bottle. Richards sat down and took the bottle with a nod. "Mr. Richards, this gentleman on my right is Fred Victor, the director of The Running Man. This other fellow, as I'm sure you know, is Bobby Thompson." "Thompson, of course. host and MC of The Running Man. He wore a natty green tunic, slightly iridescent, and sporting a mane of hair that was silvery, attractive enough to be suspect. Do you diet? Richards asked. Thompson's impeccable eyebrows went up. I beg your pardon? Never mind, Richards said. You'll have to make allowances for Mr. Richards, Gillian said, smiling. He seems quite afflicted with an extreme case of the roods. Quite understandable, Thompson said, and lit a cigarette. Richards felt a wave of unreality surge over him, under the circumstances. Come over here, Mr. Richards, if you please, Victor said, taking charge. He led Richards to the bank of screens on the other side of the room. The technico had finished with his numbers and had left the room. Victor punched two buttons, and left-right views of the running man set sprang into view. We don't do a run-through here, Victor said. We think it detracts from the spontaneity. Bobby just wings it, and he does a pretty damn good job. We go on at 6 o'clock, Harding time. Bobby is centre stage on that raised blue dais. He does a lead-in, giving a rundown on you. The monitor will flash a couple of still pictures. You'll still be in the wings on the right, flanked by two games guards. They'll have to come on with you, armed with riot guns. Move-alongs would be more practical if you decided to give trouble, but the riot guns are good theatre. Sure, Richard said. There will be a lot of booing from the audience. We pack it that way because it's good theatre, just like the kill ball matches. Are you going to shoot me with fake bullets? Richards asked. You could put a few blood bags on me to splatter on cue. That would be good theatre too. Pay attention, please, Victor said. You and the guards go on when your name is called. Bobby will interview you. Feel free to express yourself as colourfully as you wish. It's all good theatre. Then, around 6:10, just before the first network promo, you'll be given your stake money and exit, sans guards, at stage left. Do you understand? Yes. What about Lachlan? Victor frowned and lit a cigarette. He comes on after you at 6:15. We run two contestants simultaneously because often one of the contestants is uh, inadept at staying ahead of the hunters. With a kid as backup? Mr. Jansky? Yes, but none of that concerns you, Mr. Richards. When you exit stage left, you'll be given a tape machine, which is about the size of a box of popcorn. It weighs 6 pounds. With it, you'll be given 60 tape clips, which are about 4 inches long. The equipment will fit inside your coat pocket without a bulge. It's a triumph of modern technology. Swell. Victor pressed his lips together. As Dan already told you, Richards, you're a contestant only for the masses. Actually, you're a working man and should view your role in that light. The tape cartridges can be dropped into any mail slot and they'll be delivered express to us so we can edit them for airing at night. Failure to deposit 2 clips a day will result in legal default of your payment. But I'll still be hunted down? Right. So mail those tapes. They won't give away your location. The hunters operate independently for broadcasting sections. Richard had his doubts about that, but said nothing. After we give you the equipment, you'll be escorted to the street elevator. This gives directly on Rampart Street. I swear that's the sentence. Once you're there, you're on your own. He paused. Questions? No. Then Mr. Gillian has one more money detail to straighten out with you. They walked back to where Dan Gillian was in conversation with Arthur M. Burns. Richards asked for another rooty toot, and he got it. Mr. Richards, Gillian said, and twinkled his teeth at him. As you know, you leave the studio unarmed, but this is not to say that you cannot arm yourself by fair means or foul. Goodness no. Your estate, will be paid an additional $100 for any hunter or representative of the law that you should happen to dispatch. I know. Don't tell me, Richard said. It's good theatre. Killian smiled delightedly. How astute of you. Yes, however, try not to bag any innocent bystanders. That's not kosher. Richard said nothing. The other aspect of the programme, the stoolies and independent cameramen, I know. They're not stoolies, they're good North American citizens. It was difficult to tell whether Killian's tone hurt was real or ironic. Anyway, there's an 800 number for anyone who spots you. A verified sighting pays $100 new. A sighting which results in a kill pays 1,000. We pay independent cameramen $10, a foot and up. Retire to scenic Jamaica on blood money, Richards cried, spreading his arms wide. Get your picture on 100 3D weeklies. Be the idol of millions. Just holograph for details. That's enough, Killian said quietly. Bobby Thompson was uh, buffing his finger nails. Victor had wandered out and could be faintly heard yelling at someone about camera angles. Killian pressed a button. Miss Jones, ready for you sweets. He stood up and offered his hand again. Make up next, Mr. Richards. Then the lighting runs. You'll be quartered off stage, and we won't meet again, so before you go on, it's been grand, Richard said, and inclined his head. Miss Jones led him out. It was 2:30. Minus 81, and counting. Richard stood in the wings, with a cop on each side, listening to the studio audience as they frantically applauded Bobby Thompson. He was nervous. He jeered at himself for it, but the nervousness was a fact. Jeering would not make it go away. It was 6:01. Tonight's first contestant is a shrewd, resourceful man from the south of the canal in our home city, Thompson was saying. The monitor faded to a stark portrait of Richards in his baggy grey work shirt, taken by a hidden camera days before. The background looked like the fifth floor waiting room. It had been retouched, Richards thought, so as to make his eyes deeper, his forehead a little lower, and his cheeks more shadowed. His mouth had been given a jeering, curled expression by some technico's airbrush. All in all, the Richards on the monitor was terrifying, an angel of death, brutal, not very bright, but possessed of a certain primitive animal cunning. The uptown apartment dweller's boogeyman. This man is Benjamin Richards, aged 28. Know the face well. In a half an hour, this man will be on the prowl. A verified sighting brings you $100 new. A sighting which brings a kill results in $1,000 for you. Richard's mind was wandering. It came back to the point with the mighty snap. And this was the woman that Benjamin Richards' award will go to if and when he is brought down. The picture dissolved to a still of Sheila, but the airbrush had been at work again, and this time wielded with a heavier hand. The results were brutal. The sweet, not so good looking face had been transformed into that of a vapid slattern. Full pouting lips, eyes that seemed to glitter with avarice, a suggestion of a double chin fading down to the appearance, or to what appeared to be bare breasts. You bastard, Richards grated. He lunged forward, but powerful arms held him back. Simmer down, buddy. It's only a picture. A moment later, he was half led, half dragged on stage. The audience reaction was immediate. The studio was filled with screamed cries of "Boo! Cycle bum! Get out, you creep! Kill him! Kill the bastard! You eat it! Get out! Get out!" Bobby Thompson held his arms up and shouted good-naturedly for quiet. "Let's hear what he's got to say." The audience quietened, but reluctantly. Richard stood, bull-like, under the hot lights, with his head lowered. He knew he was projecting exactly the aura of hate and defiance that they wanted him to project, but he could not help it. He stared at Thompson with hard, red-rimmed eyes. Somebody is going to eat their own balls for that picture of my wife, he said. Speak up, Mr. Richards, Thompson cried, with just the right note of contempt. Nobody will hurt you, at least, not yet. More screams of hysterical, oh my goodness, vituperation from the audience. Richard suddenly wheeled to face them, and they quieted as if slapped. Women stared at him with frightened, half-sexual expressions. Men grinned at him with blood-hate in their eyes. You bastards, he said. If you want to see somebody die so bad, why don't you kill each other? His final words were drowned in more screams. People from the audience, perhaps paid to do so, were trying to get on stage. The police were holding them back. Richards faced them, knowing how he must look. Thank you, Mr. Richards, for those words of wisdom. The contempt was palpable now, and the crowd, nearly silent again, was eating it up. Would you like to tell our audience in the studio and at home how long you think you can hold out? I want to tell everyone in the studio and at home that it wasn't my wife. That was a cheap fake. The crowd drowned them out. Their screams of hate had reached near fever pitch. Thompson waited nearly half a minute for them to quiet a little, and then repeated, How long do you expect to hold out, Mr. Richards? I expect to go the whole 30, Richards said coolly. I don't think you've got anyone who can take me. More screaming, shaking fists. Someone threw a tomato. Bobby Thompson faced the audience again and cried, with those last cheap words of bravado, Mr. Richards will be led from the stage. Tomorrow at noon, the hunt begins. Remember his face. It may be the next. It may be the next to you on. Oh, it may be next to you on the Numobus, in a jet plane, in a 3D rack, in your local Killball area. Tonight he's in Harding. Tomorrow in New York, uh, Boise, Albuquerque, Columbus, skulking outside your home. You will report him? Yes, they screamed. Richard suddenly gave them the finger, both fingers. This time there was a rush for the stage, and by no stretch of the imagination was it simulated. Richards was rushed out the stage, exit left, before they could rip him apart on camera, thus depriving the network of all the juicy upcoming coverage. Minus 80, and counting. Gillian was in the wings and convulsing with amusement. Fine performance, Mr. Richard. Fine. God, I wish I could give you a bonus. Those fingers. Superb. We aim to please, Richard said. The monitors were dissolving into a promo. Give me a goddamn camera and go fuck yourself. That's generally impossible, Gillian said, still grinning. But here's the camera. He took it from the Technico who had been cradling it, fully loaded and ready to go. And here are the clips. He handed Richards a small, surprisingly heavy oblong box and wrapped it in oilcloth. Richards dropped the camera into one coat pocket, the clips of the other into the other. Okay, where's the elevator? Not so fast, Gillian said. You've got a minute. 12 of them, actually. Your 12 hours leeway doesn't start officially until 6:30. It's my eyes getting tired. The screams of rage had begun. Looking over his shoulder, Richard saw that Lachlan was on. His heart went out to him. I like you, Richards, and I think you'll do well, Gillian said. You have a certain crude style that I enjoy immensely. I'm a collector, you know. Cave art and Egyptian artifacts are my area of specialization. You have more analogous, or you are more analogous to the cave art than to my Egyptian urns, but no matter. I wish you could be preserved, collected, if you please, just as my Asian cave paintings have been collected and preserved. Grab a recording of my brainwaves, you bastard. They're on record. So I'd like to give you a piece of advice, Killian said, ignoring him. You don't really have a chance. Nobody does with the whole nation on the manhunt, and with the incredibly sophisticated equipment and training that the hunters have. But if you stay low, you'll last longer. Use your legs instead of any weapons that you happen to pick up, and stay close to your own people. He levelled a finger at Richards in emphasis. Not these good middle class folks out there. They hate your guts. You symbolise all the fears of this dark and broken time. It wasn't all show and audience packing out there. Richards, they hate your guts. Could you feel it? Yes, Richards said. I feel it. I hate them too. Killian smiled. That's why we're killing you. He took Richard's arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. This way. Behind him, Lockwood was being ragged by Bobby Thompson to the audience's satisfaction. Down a white corridor, their footfalls echoed hollowly. Alone, all alone, one elevator at the end. This is where you and I part company, Killian said. Express to the street, 9 seconds. He offered his hand for the fourth time, and Richard refused it again. Yet he lingered a moment. What if I could go up, he said, and gestured his head toward the ceiling, and the 8 stories above the ceiling. Who could I kill up there? Who could I kill if I went right to the top? Killian laughed softly and punched the button beside the elevator. The doors popped open. This is what I like about you, Richards. You think big. Richards stepped into the elevator. The doors slid towards each other. Stay low, Killian repeated, and then Richards was alone. The bottom dropped out of his stomach as the elevator sank towards the street. And we'll leave it there. All I can describe it as is Lockwood has a size 12 font, and the Running Man has like a size 11, 10, something like that. It's much smaller, so it's harder to make out the wee words. Plus, like I say, the language is old, and some of the. What was that we read there? What was that thing? Can I find it again? What were they talking about? Has anyone had that drink? A rooty toot? What on earth's that? Is that a what do you call it? Root beer. That's what I'm talking about. Anyone is that what that is? A root beer, a rooty toot. What's that other thing? Ah, dear knows. But I'll get Lockwood uploaded tonight, and I'll get that uploaded Tuesday, of course, for our Horror Tuesdays. And thanks for listening.